transparency and trust as drivers of regeneration. Transparency in the food system extends beyond simply knowing where food comes from. It encompasses the entire production process, from how soil and water resources are managed to the methods used for cultivation and harvesting. A great example of this is the practice of farm visits, workshops, and open days, where consumers are invited to witness the growing practices firsthand. In some agroecological farms, for instance, customers are encouraged to walk through fields where crops are grown using organic methods, or visit pastures where rotational grazing is used to ensure soil health and animal welfare. Such initiatives not only foster transparency, but also provide environmental education, helping consumers better understand the complexities of sustainable farming. This engagement builds trust between the farmer and the community, which in turn drives innovation. Farmers are motivated to continuously improve their methods, experimenting with techniques like companion planting, agroforestry, and regenerative practices that restore soil health and promote biodiversity. At the same time, consumers who are involved in the process develop a deeper appreciation for the effort and care that goes into food production. With a clearer understanding of the environmental and social impact of their choices, many are more willing to invest in higher quality, sustainably produced products, further supporting and sustaining these regenerative practices. Through this mutual exchange, both producers and consumers become active participants in shaping a more transparent and resilient food system. Strategies to shorten supply chains, local markets or farmers' fairs. Initiatives such as farmers' markets, weekly fairs, or consumer cooperatives play a key role in shortening supply chains by reducing intermediaries and allowing direct connections between producers and consumers. These spaces offer fresh, locally grown foods of higher nutritional value and provide a platform for producers to share their growing practices. By engaging in face-to-face exchanges, consumers can better understand where their food comes from and the effort behind its production. This direct contact promotes trust and strengthens the community's connection to local agriculture, helping ensure that both the producer and the consumer are equally invested in the sustainability of the food system. Additionally, these markets often focus on seasonal produce, further reducing environmental impacts associated with long-distance food transportation. Seed banks. Shortening the supply chain is not just about the point of sale, but also about the very beginning of the food cycle, the seeds. Community-run seed banks are an excellent example of how to localize and preserve traditional agricultural practices. These banks collect, store, and protect locally adapted seeds, many of which are more resilient to regional climate conditions and require fewer external inputs, like synthetic fertilizers or pesticides. By maintaining a diverse range of seeds, seed banks enhance food sovereignty and offer a sustainable option for farmers. In turn, these local seeds are shared among community members, reinforcing the cycle of regeneration and reinforcing local resilience to the impacts of climate change. This not only empowers the community to control what is planted and eaten, but also promotes genetic diversity that safeguards against pests and diseases. Distribution and subscription systems. Another effective way to shorten supply chains is through subscription services that provide consumers with regular deliveries of fresh, seasonal produce directly from local farms. These subscription models, which offer weekly hampers or baskets of fresh food, give both consumers and producers stability and security. Consumers receive high-quality, seasonal food that is often organically grown, while farmers benefit from a steady income that allows for better planning and resource management, such as crop rotation, organic fertilization, and water conservation techniques. These systems create a mutually beneficial relationship based on trust and transparency. Consumers know exactly how their food is grown, and producers are assured of a reliable market for their produce. By bypassing traditional retail distribution channels, subscription systems help reduce waste, optimize logistics, and strengthen local economies. Community-supported agriculture, CSA. In a CSA model, consumers purchase shares of a farm's harvest at the beginning of the season, which provides the farmer with upfront capital to cover early season expenses. In return, consumers receive fresh produce throughout the growing season, with some models also offering access to other products like eggs, dairy, and honey. This system shortens supply chains by eliminating middlemen and creating a direct relationship between the farmer and the consumer. The CSA model fosters a deeper connection to the land and its rhythms, and strengthens the resilience of local food systems by ensuring that food production is tightly linked to the needs of the community. Food hubs are another growing strategy to shorten supply chains by acting as regional aggregation points where local producers can bring their products for sale, reducing the distance that food needs to travel to reach consumers. These hubs provide infrastructure and support for smaller farms to access larger markets that would otherwise be difficult for them to penetrate on their own. They often focus on organic, sustainably grown products and help build relationships between producers, distributors, and consumers. By creating a centralized point for local food distribution, food hubs reduce transportation costs, lower carbon footprints, and provide a reliable marketplace for small-scale farmers. Towards a culture of regeneration, shortening supply chains is ultimately an act of revaluing human labor and the land that sustains it. By integrating permaculture principles, local economies become more resilient to global crises, such as supply disruptions and drastic price fluctuations. Additionally, this approach promotes soil regeneration by preventing overexploitation and returning essential nutrients to the land. In broad terms, the premise, rebuilding the fundamental building block of life, implies understanding that soil is the basis not only of food security, but of life itself. When citizens engage in practices that close the cycle of production and consumption, through local markets, seed banks, or composting, a culture of shared responsibility is created. This shift in mindset, anchored in permaculture principles, repairs the disconnect between people and the earth, and demonstrates that sustainability is not a utopia, but a tangible reality that we can all support through our daily choices. Shortening supply chains is not just a standalone strategy. It is a pivotal step towards fostering greater transparency, trust, and sustainability. By integrating permaculture principles, we can regenerate the very soil beneath our feet, ultimately contributing to the restoration of life's foundational systems on our planet. YouTube video, Regenerating the World's Degraded Soil. YouTube video, How Supply Chain Transparency Can Help the Planet. Marcus Moots. YouTube video. What is regenerative agriculture? 2.5. How to include groups/adults with fewer opportunities. Address regeneration through a critical social justice lens. Permaculture, in its social dimension, emphasizes that all regenerative design must start from the premise that people are not only part of the environment, but also transform and build it collectively. Although special attention is often paid to ecological aspects, caring for the soil, biodiversity, and natural resources, the human dimension cannot be reduced to a secondary complement. On the contrary, caring for people and fair share constitute two ethical pillars that demand the active inclusion of all groups, especially those who have been historically marginalized or who face additional barriers to participating in regeneration processes. From the perspective of critical social justice, it is about recognizing and addressing existing inequalities, offering real opportunities for participation and benefit to those who have enjoyed them least. Recognizing the gap, why include groups with fewer opportunities? Exclusion is not usually the result of a single factor, but rather the confluence of economic, cultural, educational, or discrimination problems, which hinder the participation of certain adults in community projects. They may be migrants with little command of the local language, long-term unemployed people, single mothers with little time available, or isolated rural communities that do not have access to training resources. Without a conscious strategy to integrate them, these groups may be separated from the benefits of permaculture, such as food sovereignty, the strengthening of support networks, and the formation of skills, perpetuating inequalities. Integrating social inclusion into permaculture, a path to equitable regeneration. Permaculture is rooted in ethics that extend beyond environmental sustainability. It is also a framework for social transformation. The principles of caring for people and fair share emphasize the importance of meeting both individual and collective needs while ensuring an equitable distribution of resources and surpluses. These values invite us to critically examine regeneration projects, prompting essential questions. Who holds decision-making power? Who benefits the most? Are marginalized groups actively included from the design phase? Addressing these questions with honesty and intention leads to more inclusive and just initiatives that empower entire communities. Tools for social inclusion in permaculture. A truly regenerative approach must integrate social justice, ensuring that all individuals, particularly those with fewer opportunities, can participate meaningfully. Permaculture offers a range of participatory methodologies that foster engagement, recognize diverse knowledge systems, and create accessible learning and economic opportunities. Participatory decision-making and community assemblies. Involving the entire community in identifying challenges and co-designing solutions fosters inclusivity and shared ownership of projects. Open assemblies, neighborhood meetings, and collective decision-making frameworks such as World Cafe or Open Space Technology promote horizontal participation. These approaches ensure that even the most vulnerable groups have a voice, making them active contributors rather than passive recipients of aid. Knowledge exchange and collective learning. Every person, regardless of background, possesses valuable knowledge. Recognizing and utilizing traditional skills, such as artisanal crafts, local cooking techniques, or indigenous agricultural practices, creates opportunities for mutual learning. Establishing knowledge exchange circles empowers individuals with fewer opportunities to take on teaching roles, reinforcing self-esteem and strengthening community bonds. Practical workshops adapted to diverse needs. Free or low-cost workshops on practical skills, organic gardening, composting, tool repair, natural construction provide tangible benefits while ensuring accessibility. Offering flexible schedules, childcare services, and scholarships removes barriers to participation, allowing more individuals to engage in meaningful learning experiences. Solidarity-based production and economic empowerment. Permaculture projects can go beyond environmental goals by fostering economic inclusion. Initiatives such as cooperative gardens, solidarity markets, and eco-craft collectives create income opportunities for marginalized groups. For example, unemployed individuals or migrants managing a community garden can sell produce locally, reinvesting profits into further training and infrastructure. This model strengthens local economies while reinforcing the ethics of fair trade and sustainable living. Integrating social justice into regeneration efforts. Too often, permaculture projects prioritize ecological restoration while neglecting social equity. A truly holistic approach requires integrating considerations of accessibility and justice from the outset. Key questions include: who has historically been excluded from decision-making in our community? How can we ensure inclusivity? For example, adapting infrastructure for people with disabilities, providing translation services, or offering flexible schedules. How can project surpluses be redistributed to benefit those most in need? By addressing these questions, regeneration efforts move beyond environmental impact to become catalysts for social transformation. Inclusive projects tend to generate more innovative and resilient solutions, drawing on the diverse experiences and skills of all community members. Examples of effective inclusion in permaculture. Community gardens for vulnerable groups. In various cities, community gardens have designated spaces for marginalized populations, such as survivors of domestic violence, recent migrants, or elderly individuals living alone. These gardens offer training in permaculture while also providing job-seeking support and social integration opportunities. Engaging with the land fosters autonomy and creates strong community ties. Permaculture in rehabilitation and reintegration programs. Organizations have developed regenerative projects for formerly incarcerated individuals or those recovering from addiction, providing skills training through gardening, ecological restoration, and community building activities. These projects offer a sense of purpose, build confidence, and facilitate social reintegration. Mobile training for rural and isolated communities. To reach communities with limited educational infrastructure, mobile permaculture units deliver workshops on seed preservation, water conservation, and soil regeneration. These initiatives empower rural populations by equipping them with sustainable practices tailored to their local environments. Eco-housing and self-construction projects. For low-income individuals, access to safe housing is a pressing issue. Permaculture-based bioconstruction programs train participants in natural building techniques, enabling them to construct or improve their homes using affordable, locally sourced materials. Beyond housing solutions, these projects foster economic self-sufficiency by equipping participants with valuable construction skills. Inclusion in permaculture is not an act of charity. It is a fundamental application of its ethics. By integrating adults with fewer opportunities into regenerative projects, we tap into a wealth of knowledge, resilience, and creativity that enriches entire communities. When social and ecological regeneration go hand in hand, we create not just sustainable environments, but also empowered, cohesive societies capable of facing future challenges together. 2.5 How to include groups/adults with fewer opportunities. Address regeneration through a critical social justice lens. When building projects based on permaculture, it is often forgotten that sustainability not only concerns natural ecosystems, but also the way we relate to people. The ethics of caring for people and fair share urge that no one be left out of the benefits that a regenerative project can offer, especially those who face economic, social, or cultural barriers that make their participation difficult. When we refer to groups/adults with fewer opportunities, we are talking about groups that, for reasons such as discrimination, precariousness, or scarcity of training resources, have not had equal access to land, education, or collaboration networks. Integrating them actively and respectfully not only translates into social justice, but also enriches any initiative with a diversity of perspectives and knowledge. A social justice approach to regeneration. In the field of permaculture, ecological regeneration is deeply linked to social regeneration. A fertile soil and a diverse forest are incomplete if the communities that inhabit that territory continue to suffer structural inequalities or see specific groups excluded. The approach of social justice proposes starting from the identification of existing gaps. Which groups do not participate in community assemblies or in decisions that affect the territory? Who lacks the financial or training means to adopt permaculture techniques? These questions force us to design strategies that reduce the impact of such barriers and guarantee real and empowering inclusion. The ethics of permaculture, caring for people and fair share. The premise of caring for people places dignity and human well-being at the center, emphasizing that a project without social objectives can reproduce the same inequalities that it aims to combat in the environmental field. Fair share, for its part, reminds us that surpluses, whether food, economic resources, or knowledge, must be distributed equitably to reinforce social cohesion and solidarity. Both guidelines push communities to consider how to enable groups with fewer opportunities to participate and obtain tangible benefits from each initiative, instead of receiving specific support or charity.